everyone, I'm Finn.
And I'm Matt.
And we're here at PAX East talking to Kieran from Larian, for like the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th time, I don't know.
Hey, it's become an institution at this point.
Yeah.
We'll take it. Yeah, we'll take it.
Is it even a PAX if we haven't crossed paths at some point?
No, I look for you every PAX at this point. You know, I'm expecting it. It's like, and it's lovely because it's like, I always say this to people on their booths as well. It's like, PAX is great for two things. One, absolutely is the fans. It's wonderful when you're working on something for so long as we do, coming to PAX because you see the fandom and you see the excitement that they obviously share for your game, but you don't see it every day, and so it really invigorates the team. That's why the team loves to come. We get so much energy from people's excitement and people's enthusiasm for the game. But the second thing then is like, it's like a traveling circus. You just see the same people every time, and it's like you develop these relationships that you're like, oh, I haven't seen you 6 months, but it's you able to build off that as well. So it's lovely to see folks like yourself and just constantly.
You love to hear it.
Yeah, every time. Well, it's funny too because it's the same for us. Seeing folks like you who are so excited to see us and want to talk to us multiple times just gives us energy too.
Means we didn't do something wrong the first time.
Right, exactly.
It's fun to talk about these things, right? Like,
it is.
Like we need to remember we're in the business of games. You know, like that's fun. It should just be about fun. And
I'm usually in the business of misery.
Come on, all
I
right.
can't help that.
So, you know, you released a little-known indie game last year called Baldur's Gate 3, but that's actually not what we're here to talk about.
No, you guys just played the Divinity Originals on the board game.
We did, which you were also a part of. So before we even get into the nuts and bolts of the game, I'm just wanted to talk to you, like, what was it like having such a large role in two massive projects concurrently? Like, that's...
I wouldn't recommend it, is what I would say. I know. I think the most important thing with projects of that size is a great team. So, like, yeah, sure, I had a large role to play, but first of all, I'm Irish. I don't like necessarily blowing myself up here a little bit, but like...
Oh, we'll gas you up, don't worry.
Yeah,
we'll get there.
But the point is, like, we have absolute wonderful teams, and so, like, the same, whatever about BG3, because we have had that wonderful team that we've been building off from Original Sin 1 onwards, and even before that, the Divinity board game team that came together, especially in the second wave when we had to basically go back and redesign a lot of things from scratch in 2021, we really didn't know, oh lads, we're in trouble here. We really need a lot of work, and we had to go to the backers and apologize for the delays, etc. Like, the team that came together for that, like, I cannot take credit for the amount of work that those guys have done. It's fantastic. So it's been quite a journey, and it's been quite a journey on both sides. Yes, it took a lot of energy and effort, but like, you survive based on your team, and those guys are absolute champions.
It's so great. I have to imagine you don't even want to hear a question about what's next at this point. These two massive projects, and I'm sure...
They're easy. No comment.
No comment, right? But
well,
like,
I can tell you what's not next. Baldur's Gate 4 or Baldur's Gate 3 DLC.
But
That just broke, yeah.
But with the board game specifically, what is it like to convert a beloved title that so many people love into a different medium while trying to sustain the vibe of it? Was that a challenge to change it from screen to cards?
It's actually an immense challenge, and that's the reason why it took so long. When the first iteration of the game that we pitched to Kickstarter, so it was very hard, and that's why it took so long. Like, when you look at our original Kickstarter and the iteration of that game, we finished that iteration, like, we had to obviously flesh it out and add some content to it. We got to 2021 and we realized, while this is remaining as faithful as it can to the video game, because of that, it's not made to be a very fun board game at the moment. There's a lot of fun in there, but there's a lot of work to get to the fun, if that makes sense. Yeah. So we had to go back to the drawing board. We had to simplify things even greater. And the problem with that then is you're always in danger of simplifying too far, and you lose the soul of the thing that you were trying to emulate and celebrate in the board game space, right? So it was an immense challenge in that regard, because it's such a complex, systematic game. Yeah. And so people are coming in with the expectation of, oh, I want to make the area oily and also blow people up in the, oh no, I'm sorry, I hit my friend. And they want that, and not even that, but then they want the narrative experiences of DOS 2 and also now BG3, where it's like, there's a huge amount of narrative choice and consequence that if you make a decision, the game needs to recognize that, respect it, and then give you a result that you think is relevant to your story that you're trying to tell at that given time. So that challenge for the board game was a big one.
I mean, oh,
I was just going to say, well, and we saw that in action when I tried to cast essentially a fire spell into a room full of my allies and the enemies, and our incredible person doing the demo went, well, you'll set them all on fire, and I still had to think
It's
about
fine.
but I mean, that's what's incredible about this is that so many of the mechanics that we know from Divinity Original Sin 2 have somehow translated now to this, like whether it's the consumables or the cooldowns or the varied abilities and the casting, the party damage, the fact that you have friendly fire on, the environmental effects that stack upon themselves. You have
Yeah.
all the status debuffs. And yet it's conveyed in a way that is visually and mechanically makes sense, and at least in the demo we got, never felt overwhelming.
No. It's a weird one. I keep, like, we've been trying to piece together how we frame this in terms of talking about it, and honestly, it feels like an entry-level adventure game. There's all the depth of narrative and choice. There's a huge amount of strategic choice in the options you have for skills and everything, but there's never a moment where you're sitting down there as a player with your cards in front of you where you're like, oh, holy God, how am I meant to process my turn here? You always kind of can read it, interpret it, and immediately go, this is going to be fun, let's do this. And that is the work that we've done over the last 2 years, is to really lighten that kind of like mental load on anything that's not what's cool for you to do on your turn.
Yeah.
And it took a lot to get there.
I mean, that's the Divinity experience. The reason I love Divinity 1 and 2 is because you can kind of do anything, for better or worse, get a whole town to kill you, that kind of thing. But like the board game translates that absolutely. You have so many options, but it doesn't feel like I have too many options. It feels like I could do what I want.
Just wait till you crack out all the skills, you know?
Well, it was even cooler because the way you built it is that every playthrough is different.
Yeah.
Whether
Yes.
through your own choices or through the random nature of the cards given to you.
Yeah,
So
and
that's how you play through like that narrative aspect of it.
100%. And I was about to riff off that because when you guys, the demo you played, if you remember on the setup, if you read that, it says if you have journal card X, whatever it was, I think it's 19, then this happens, right?
Yeah.
Because the journal card system and the way we've built the Divine Atlas, the book reacts to your experiences, and we track your experiences through the journal card events.
Yeah.
So the journal cards remind you what you did. The book says, because you did this, do this. And so, like, you haven't even seen the beginnings of the narrative consequences that can start in that game, simply based on some actions you did from like 3 sessions ago, because you're playing every hour on the hour. But yeah, like the game itself, it's 50 locations, it's 50 hours of gameplay, but you're only ever going to play 15 to 18 of those in your adventure.
Yeah.
And that wasn't even, it's funny, people have been asking, did you do that on purpose for replayability? I'm like, no, that's the bonus. The bonus is you can replay. The reason is actually so that when you're playing, you feel like your choices matter.
Yeah.
And that's important. I feel like not enough games put that weight on your choices. And again, Divinity, Baldur's Gate, that's what you guys always do. You kill a quest-giving NPC, the game doesn't go, well, now the game's stuck, you can't do anything. It goes, well, you can't do this, but now this other thing happens.
Yeah.
And I love that translation to the board game.
Well, thank you.
One of the things I noticed when we played is, what was your decision between creating an entirely new origin character? Like, that just seems like you going above and beyond. Instead of just translating the initial characters, you've created brand new ones for the board game experience.
Yeah, so I mean, there was a lot of, everyone knows that Kickstarter has some ups and downs, right? Like, there's some wonderful excitement that happens when you do a Kickstarter campaign about all the new things you can do and whatever else. There was always a plan to add some new characters to the universe and to the IP just through the board game, mainly just to also give you some variety and choice, because it's a little bit easier to do it via the analog experience versus the digital experience. Every origin we add to DOS 2 is an absolute huge amount of work to add that, like you saw that with PG3 as well, right? So in this, it's a little bit easier to go, okay, this is a new character, and the characters in this are a little bit more interchangeable. Their skills matter, and they have some unique abilities, but because it's a group-based narrative, we don't need to worry about what Tangustel's story is specifically, because, and actually that was an interesting one, because originally we had storybooks for each of these characters, and we, playing them in playtest back in 2020, 2021, it was actually forcing players to this is how you feel, which meant that the character wasn't yours anymore. We were telling you who the character was. And so we had people who were enjoying the game far better when they weren't using those storybooks because, like, especially people who don't know Divinity Original Sin 2, I had one tester who's always stuck in my mind. She was playing Losa. She didn't know who Losa was. So for her, Losa was her.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
But if you force her down a story down her throat through this like storybook of who Losa is, then suddenly she doesn't feel that authentic ownership and that kind of sense of what's the word I'm looking for? When it's you're in control. What's that?
Your Tav.
Yeah, your tab, yeah. No, but she didn't feel like she was actually making her story, and,
Right.
and that stuck with us, which is why the characters are a little bit less kind of like...
She didn't have the same agency.
She didn't have the agency. There you go, yeah. So honestly, like, that's the kind of one of those unintended things that happened with Kickstarter. We added these characters, but we were also going to add all these stories, and then we realized halfway through that's not a good idea because it removes that agency from the player.
That's probably something that, like, translation from video game to board game, you think this is a great idea, and then you don't find out until you're making it. I'm curious now that you've gone from Divinity Original Sin 2 to Baldur's Gate 3 to the board game, and now whatever's next, do you take some of the board game logic and mechanics or ideas back to the video game side? Is there anything that you've seen that you're like, oh, that could be interesting, even characters, the world, the way stuff works? Like, is your view of building a video game different now that you've built a board game as well?
I think if there's anything that we've learned, and we knew this going in, which is kind of why we used an outside partner, but we definitely learned it even the harder way when that outside partner had to move on to other projects and we had to take it internal. The differences are immense. It feels like they're very similar, and
Right.
game design is very similar, but the responsibilities of you as the developer to make sure the experience is a smooth experience is there's a lot of nuances there that are very, very different. Honestly, I'm going to have to talk to the dev team when they're playing their copies to see what they pick up on it. But we borrowed so much from the designers before, so Larian, that I'm not going to pretend that, oh yeah, you're going to take my idea now. Like, in reality, so much of the greatness in that game is because of how good DOS 2 was and the games before it. So honestly, like, it's more about the challenge of what are those differences and how do we make sure we refine it for the experience it's designed for.
Love that.
Well, we don't want to take up too much of your time because turns out your booth, even with Baldur's Gate 3 already out,
It's still
is
busy.
always
as hell.
busy.
Yeah, some people like it, it seems.
Oh, yeah.
It's so weird.
Yeah.
And also, shout out to your booth designer and your team for the photo ops. You
Yeah.
guys always do a great job.
Oh,
That
yeah.
has nothing to do with this. Just more for you.
No, and our cosplayers are having a great time out
Oh
there.
my God,
Yeah.
it's so great to see them roll through and just
So-
kind of hang out and hold court. It's great.
So I know I have a final question. Do you have any final questions?
So I'll have a sign off for our podcast after you ask your final question.
Okay. So I've already answered the famous cake versus pie question.
Okay, yeah.
So the new question for you, and just for you, because you're the only one at this level.
Oh, I'm at a level now. I like
You
it.
are. You are.
Mhm.
You've leveled up. Is popcorn a dessert?
Oi. Oh, what is popcorn? That's the weird one, right? It's like it's almost a bread. Feels like. No, I'm joking. I'm teasing. No, I would say. I would say yes.
Good
No,
answer.
I would say no. I
Oh.
would say no.
All right.
Because like
I'm in the no camp personally.
And I
feel
will-
it's more of
I'm in
a
the yes
snack.
camp.
I will tell you, it's a
I'm in the
snack.
yes
and
camp.
I will tell you why it's not a dessert. Because a dessert is something that you can eat, and you shouldn't eat because you're already full. It's like, hey, that's so good looking. I'm stuffed to the gills, but I need to eat that because it looks gorgeous. Popcorn, you look at it and you realize I'm way too bloated for that. I'm not going to have it right now. That's why it's not a dessert. You can't eat it after dinner.
Sound logic. It's
There
very
it is.
sound.
You know it.
Hi everyone, thanks for having me. Thanks SDGC for having me. I'm Kieran, this is PAX, and we're signing out.
Yeah. Saki bless.
Saki bless.